All right. How are we doing? Let's get into it. We are going to talk about the while loop because we're here with repetition structures. And in the last video we did, we talked about the for loop. Here's a different kind of loop. This is the while loop. And again, these are my definitions, um, which they I pull them from other sources, but I word them in my own little special way. Anyways, the while loop, what does it do? It completes a task until a condition is false. Okay. And this is the syntax for a while loop. It looks, I suppose, a tad bit cleaner than the for loop because we don't have those other features, or so it seems. But I have while loop that says, hey, while a condition, again, this has to be evaluated to either true or false. So while a condition, do stuff. Okay, I'm gonna come back over here to my file here, and we're in this. I'm in the same file that I was in previously, so I didn't make a new folder or anything for this project. But let's do this again. So the while loop syntax is we use the while keyword, and we have a condition, curly brace, and inside of here, while a condition is true, we do stuff. Okay, pretty simple. So what I'm going to do to test this out, see how it works, I am going to utilize my coders up here. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing that we did before. Instead of saying good afternoon, I'm going to say good evening to coders. Okay, so I'm going to say good morning to each coder in the coders array. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to create an index, or an I, what have you. I'll just say var I, and I'm going to set that to 0, like so. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start my while loop up. So I'm going to say while, and I will say I is less than coders.length. And before I do that, I'm going to stop this because right now, currently, I have it going live. So I terminated my little mini server from Visual Studio Code. Um, so I say while I is less than coders.length, then what I want to do is I want to say on console.log, good morning. And then right here, I'm just going to concatenate the string. I'm just going to say, not coders, I. And last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say I plus plus. Okay. I'm going to increment I. Okay. So let me start this up in ye olden way. I'm going to go and find that particular file. Where are we? Loops. I'm start up the old school way. All right. And so now I've ran it, and here it is right here. You can see it says good morning to every coder that we have. Matter of fact, where's my clear? I don't have a clear somewhere up here. I'm going to move that down. Oh, I don't. Okay. Now's a good time for me to add one. I'm going to add it right here. And get all the other stuff out of the way. All right. Let me refresh. There we go. All right. So there You can see every coder has been greeted. Okay. So what's happening here? The while loop. And we can look at it, compare this while loop, the ingredients here for the while loop with the for loop that we have here. Okay. Um, and maybe for some, it might be a little more readable. I don't know. If it is, great. If not, don't worry about it, because you can execute the same task using a for loop. Okay. Um, but you can see that above the loop, so or above the code block, we do have some sort of initialization here. We're setting I to be 0. And then we're saying, hey, while I is less than coders.length, then console, good morning coders I, and then here we're incrementing. So we still have some sort of initialization, we have some sort of condition, and we also have some sort of iteration. It's just where they're placed. Okay. And so that it works here, and this is good. But with the while loop, and let's look at the slides here. That's kind of what we have here. We're counting to 10 in this instance here. So first we have to initialize the variable, and outside of the loop, that's where it needs to go. Make sure that it is outside of the loop. And then JavaScript is evaluating the statement while, I is less than or equal to 10, then console I, and then increment I. So now it becomes 2, and then we just loop through it again. So that's what we could do with the loop, a while loop. But also, as you can see here, that while loops work well with game logic, because with a while loop, the initialization does not have to necessarily be a number, if you will. Okay. Because we don't have to necessarily loop through a data set when using a while loop. Here with a while loop, you can see it can control or handle the state of, say, a game, right? Like if you're playing, I don't know, Pac-Man, and you can set the state of the game to, Pac-Man has game ended, and we can set that to false, right? So or we can set it to true rather. Well, no, has game ended. Well, is gameplay. Let's call it gameplay instead. Let me name it something better. So I would have a variable called gameplay. I can say var gameplay and set that to true. Okay. And then I can say while gameplay, I'm sorry, let me put this in parentheses. While gameplay, and then here Pac-Man's doing stuff, right? Here I can say, I move the cursor, or I press the key, the up, down, left, or right key, and then Pac-Man will move in this direction. Pac-Man will eat pellets. The ghost will chase after Pac-Man. In Mrs. Pac-Man, or in just regular Pac-Man, they'll just be, just moving around aimlessly. That was like the big thing with Pac-Man, because you all so young, you all babies. Like with the original Pac-Man, the ghost would just kind of move around, right? And they would just be, just moving aimlessly or whatever, and you just happen to get bit by one of them. But Mrs. Pac-Man, they made the game more challenging because the ghost would actually follow you around, and they would actually be chasing you, and that was the big thing with Mrs. Pac-Man. And so, and then the logic behind it was, with Pac-Man, there was created it's called a scent. So basically, it was like the ghost would be sniffing out Miss Pac-Man. So the scent would be, say, it'll be represented by a number. You know, I don't know. Let's just say 10. Okay, and for every, I guess, space, pellet, what have you, um, away from Pac-Man as it's spread out, the scent would get smaller. So it say go from 10 to down to like 0. But once a ghost like gets within that radius of scent, it would detect Pac-Man and then try to move closer to you. And that's the way that it will work. And so like if, you know, the ghost is out here in a space that's 0 and the scent is 10, once it gets to like scent of 1, it's like, oh, let me find 2, let me find 3, let me find 4. And so it would try to get closer, and that's how the ghost would end up chasing Miss Pac-Man around. But anyways, all that to say, the way that, you know, game logic will go is you could set, you know, your gameplay to be true, and then you make a while loop that says, hey, while the gameplay is true, then do all this stuff. Okay. But you would need to have something here, and you can see here, once something sets the gameplay to false, you know, say Mario getting hit by Bullet Bill, the program will no longer run. So you would have to have something that would set the gameplay to false. Okay. Otherwise, the game would just continue to run. So, you know, in the example of Pac-Man, when all the pellets are eaten up, you know, or you know, pellet count is 0, then set the gameplay to false. We won. Or if the coordinates of a ghost are touching the coordinates are the same as the coordinates of Pac-Man, then in other words, Pac-Man was bit or attacked or whatever, pummeled by a ghost, then you set the gameplay to false. So there has, when using a while loop, there has to be something that sets the gameplay to false. All right. So let's look here. While loops can be tricky. And we noticed in the previous example that we set the variable I gets 1 outside of the loop. What do you think would happen if I were initialized or assigned within the loop? What's happening here?
It would always set back to 1.
It would always be set back to 1, which means we've done what? We've created an infinite loop. So if you can see that here, we're setting. So we set I to be 1 outside the loop. Okay, and we're saying, hey, while I is less than or equal to 10, I gets 1, console.log I plus plus. So here, you know, we're gonna set I to 1. We're gonna console.log I, which is what? 1. And then we're gonna increment I becomes what?
2.
All right. And then I'm gonna come up here. Is 2 less than or equal to 10? Yes, it is. So what am I first thing I'm gonna do is what? Set I right back to 1. So you can try that if you want to. Again, it's good, create an infinite loop. If you want to, we talked about infinite loops in the last video and what will happen. And I did not do that intentionally, but when I create a infinite loop in the for loop, something I may have done it twice ever. But infinite loops are, you know, they can happen pretty commonly. You just have to check your logic. In other words, check your your Boolean operators. Okay. Check your increment, decrement, what have you. And also, you know, check where you are setting and assigning variables. Because yeah, what will happen here again is we would just we just keep setting I back to 1, in which case it would just console just a whole bunch of 1s, not forever, but until the computer gets tired. But it's called an infinite loop. And so what's happening is with an infinite loop is, you know, your computer's just running this process, right? and it can't keep up the printing, the logging out of one in this instance right here can't keep up with how quickly it is executing this task. So just like, you know, the way the human mind works, at some point it's going to get tired, okay, and it's just going to crash out. And that's what's happening, you know, when you create an infinite loop. So you'll start to hear that fan going when you do an infinite loop, and you know, and then at some point, eventually, you'll get some kind of alert or prompt on your on your device. They'll let you know, hey, um, but hey, what's going on here? Slow up. You know, I can't keep up with this. So that's what will happen with an infinite loop. Which, in case if that happens, the just shut your browser down, close your browser out, and then go and fix the code up, and you know, get back to work. But that's the while loop. Let's see. Let me just comment that out right there. So don't need that. Again, we with numbers, same thing. I'm just gonna use that var I get 0, and I could say here, while I is say less than or equal to 20. Console.log I minus. What's going to happen here?
It's going to go on forever.
It is going to go on forever, right? Which way? Yeah, it's going to go to that. Yeah, it's going to move left on the number line forever, because it will start off with 0 and then go to -1, -2, and just keep going on and on and on, freeze, and it'll eventually crash the computer out. So, and again, I've done this several times. I've done that. And then I would do something like this right here. In which case, this would again create an infinite loop. What would it console? It just, yeah, just infinite zeros right here. And the thing is this: when I'm in this while loop, okay, again, I'm inside these curly braces, which is a code block, okay, and I would be inside of this code block. I would stay in the house and never get out of the house, which means that this code right here, this little line here, doesn't matter what it is, could be, the most beautiful, elegant piece of code ever seen. I would never get to it because I'm stuck in here with this infinite loop that I've created. So there has to be something within the code block that will set my condition to false. Okay. There has to be something in there that will set the condition to false. Otherwise, we just keep going and create an infinite loop. So you have to be a little careful with while loops. All right. A little more careful than you would with the for loop. However, they are good, very useful. There's also this. Okay, let's say I have. I'm gonna leave. I guess here. Matter of fact, I'm gonna make this one. I'm gonna say 5. So I'm gonna still use I right there. No. What I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do a var j. I'm gonna set var j to 0. We also have something that's called do while. Okay. The do while loop looks like this. We have do, and then curly braces, and then while, and then whatever your condition is. So in other words, I could say do, I could say console.log J. And here I could say while J is greater than 1 and J is less than 10, and I could say console.log J. And bring my clear down. Let's see what this does. If it does anything at all. Maybe I'm making something up.
Coach.
Hey.
If we don't have the amper symbol, what should we use instead?
Oh, but you do. Shift and 7.
No, that's.
Yes, it is.
It doesn't look like it on my keyboard. It's like really squished down. So. That's the same thing.
Yeah. So, because I forgot something actually, but the do while loop. Okay. So if I'm doing this right, my J is greater than 1. Oh, let me.
Does that loop ever execute?
Well, it just consoled twice. Let me see what this does. I need a. Let's see, J is greater than 1, and J is less than 10. Oh, let me see. Let me do this as well. There we go. I think that's what I need to do. No? Okay. Whew, I don't know. But what the do while loop does, and I probably should describe it first before I try to just doing a thought puzzle. Sometimes you want it to do something, okay, at least one time. Matter of fact, instead of me butchering it, let me just come over here to good friend MDN. It will execute a task at least one time. So, and then it may not do anything afterwards. So it says right here, the do while statement creates a loop that executes a specified statement as long as the test condition evaluates to true. The condition is evaluated after executing the statement, resulting in a specified statement executing at least once. So here we got result empty string, let I get 0, do I gets I plus 1, result gets result plus I, while I is less than 5. And so it will console, will add, it'll console 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just adding those numbers to the string. So what it does is, again, with the do while loop, it will execute at least once, whereas a while loop, it may not execute. All right, a condition may be false, in which case it won't do anything. But sometimes you want, you want your program or this task to be executed at least one time. Matter of fact, I could just said, let me see. Oh, yeah, I didn't need all this. I could just do this right here. While said do while J is if I say while J is greater than 5. Let me see what that does. Okay, yeah, that's what I want to do. Okay, so here I'm saying, hey, console.log j while j is less than 5. And so, which case, I mean, say while j is greater than 5, rather. So, it's going to console j at least one time, right? Because it's going to console 0. It's going to do that. But at any other point, j is not greater than 5. In other words, 0 is not greater than 5, and there's nothing there that will change it. So it's only going to do that one time, because after it increments to 1, it's going to come back here. 1's not greater than 5, so I'm not going to do anything. This condition is false, so it does nothing. That's where I was trying to go. So this is like just an extension of the while loop, because with the while loop, again, it may not complete a task at all, depending on how it's written. But with the do while loop, you can say, hey, I want to do something at least one time, and then after that, it may or may not complete that task. So, be honest with you, I haven't pulled out the do while loop often. So you may or may not need it, but again, this is a tool that you have, okay? So if you need to use that tool, this is how you use it, okay? And I want you to practice a little bit with the while loop. Again, just console the numbers. Just console some numbers, or create a small array and just console the items from the array, what have you. Just practice with that as with everything else, and you'll get a little more comfortable with the tools. But in the next video, we're going to look at the for each loop. So that'll be in the next video. Like, comment, share, because I have an executive producer now, and the executive producer said that they want to buy some video games. So so you gotta like these and share and stuff, so I can get the money, so I can give it to the executive producer, so the executive producer can buy video games.